D-Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 102.5 The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, and David Janes here with you. Geez, off to a great start. I've already tongue-tied.
Absolutely.
We hope you are having a wonderful Tuesday. It's a beautiful day here in Nashville, Tennessee. Willie Donick is still in SoCal, where the Predators will play back-to-back tonight against the Anaheim Ducks. But we're going to start today's show with some breaking Predators news. In just a few moments, we will be joined by Predators CEO Sean Henry and Brian Lawler, president of Script Sports, because at about 2:30 p.m., the Predators announced that the organization and Script Sports have created, quote, a landmark multi-year media rights agreement that brings free over-the-air access to the Predators NHL games to fans across Middle Tennessee and beyond, beginning next season. More from the news release. Quote, the new agreement allows the Scripps Company to produce and distribute all local preseason, regular season, and first-round playoff Predators games that are not allocated exclusively to national broadcasts. Scripps plans to use its second full-power local station in the Middle Tennessee area, WNPX-TV, which will be the broadcast home of the Predators. It will be rebranded as The Spot, Nashville 28, beginning this summer. So, to summarize, you don't have to ask Willie Donick where the Predators games are anymore, because they will be on free over-the-air TV starting next season. It's wonderful news for Predators fans and the organization. And Willie and the crew, you'll be calling the games. Willie, how do you feel about this news?
Well, I feel really good about it because I think this is the direction a lot of teams are going in the different sports. And it is going to be, I think, much more accessible to get the games on the regional sports channels, thanks to partners like Scripps. So I think it's going to be great. I think it'll be a lot easier. Like you said, we over the last few years with all the cord cutting and things, there were so many questions from people. How do I get the games? And that you lose a certain amount of viewership, over time with that. And I think this will be a lot easier for people to understand. All it basically is all you need is an antenna. It costs you $20 or $30 to get it, and you could get every single game on there. And you still have the access to the app and things like that, which we'll find out a few more details here when we get Sean on the air with us. But I think it's an exciting piece of news for the fans. I think they're going to like that.
Let's go to our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, and welcome in Predators CEO Sean Henry, as well as president of Script Sports, Brian Lawler. Gentlemen, how are you? Thank you for joining us.
We're doing well. Thanks for having us both. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. So, Sean, let's start with you. We just read from the news release, but for Predators fans who haven't been caught up on the news, tell them what you announced about 30 minutes ago.
We announced something that we've all been working on for a long time. And, when Brian first, brought that idea to us, I don't even know when, 2 years ago or whatever, this is what we could do together. It would cover our entire TV, marketplace, which is just vast. It's a 5-state region with the Predators for free for our fans. So you look at where we are right now, we're at 25, 35% of all households in our marketplace, to now we're going to be at, 95% of all the households. And the best part about it, it's free to our fans. That's going to do things for us that we can't even imagine right now. But, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, there'll be fans that were cultivated, because of this new arrangement. And we're excited about it. And not just that, we're partnering with the #1 station in town. We're going to have a few games bleed over to News Channel 5 and simulcast like we do right now. But now we're promoting each other in and out of every single game, every single newscast. And what we do together in the community just extends right now through our broadcasts, and it will pay off the best fans in all sports. We're excited.
Brian, the Predators are the 5th NHL team to partner with Scripps, joining the Vegas Golden Knights, Florida Panthers, Tampa Bay Lightning, and Utah Mammoth. How would you describe the success that those teams have been having since partnering with Scripps from a rating standpoint?
Yeah, look, as Sean was just saying, the opportunity to be able to be on all platforms, to be free over the air. Anybody with just an antenna, you don't need any, cable, satellite. But of course, we'll be working to make sure that we get our channel cleared on cable and satellite And then as we were signing on, we heard you talk a little bit about the streaming, which we can chat about. But the reality is these games will be everywhere. And so wherever fans are, whatever they're doing in their busy lives, even if they're away from a television, they have the opportunity to be able to stay engaged and watch the games on a phone or a tablet. But we've seen, that level of engagement and that level of visibility make a huge difference for, as you said, some really good teams. And so we're finishing our third season with the Golden Knights. We've more than doubled their audience from before we started. Same thing, we've tripled the audience with the Florida Panthers. We're finishing up our first season with the Tampa Bay Lightning, and we've seen significant growth there. So, look, we know we have a platform that works, and unlike, the regional sports network that, obviously required a subscription and then was not carried everywhere and became a little bit more complicated, we're an over-the-air broadcast company, and we're able to stand up a full power broadcast channel that'll sit right alongside News Channel 5, and we'll have complete distribution in the market. So for any fan that wants to be able to watch a game, the game will be available to them one way or another.
It's very exciting to hear about that. Sean, I hearken back to my younger days before cable, and this has got a little bit of old school to it, right? I remember if you're growing up in New York, you got WOR, you had the Mets and some other teams on there. You had WPIX, had the Yankees and teams like that. This has a little bit of flavor like that, doesn't it?
Oh, there's no doubt. And as you said, WOR was, the free TV that the Rangers were on, but the Islanders were on pay TV. So I was a kid on Long Island that became a Ranger fan because I got to see it because we didn't have cable. I chose wrongly because the Islanders won 4 straight Stanley Cups, but it just shows the power of, partnering with someone over the air, what it can do for a marketplace. And again, we're partnered with the number 1 station in town. This is a big deal. It's going to be fun. Willie, we're going to make you famous. Your ratings are going to go up, 10 times just because of the power of News Channel 5 and the dedicated station, The Spot.
It is funny you mentioned that. I have, Brian, and listening to you talk about the other teams, I have bounced that off. It's just out of curiosity. We're going to Salt Lake, of course, in another day or so here. They have raved about the partnership and how it does really expand the viewership. And so maybe, Brian, you can comment on that, but also, Sean, how that impacts the franchise, right, when you do have more eyeballs watching your games.
Well, and look, I think we're excited that every fan will be able to see every game. And, for the fans who hopefully will be enjoying a, playoff caliber team every year moving forward, we look forward to them being able to watch every game. But then also for, kids growing up who maybe haven't been able to watch a game because it was stuck behind a paywall before. Now they're flipping channels. All of a sudden they, turn on a 1-1 game in the third, and there's a little, action going on, and they start watching and they enjoy it, and then they come back the next night, and then next thing you know, for Christmas they want a Preds jersey, they want tickets to a game. And so you're building fandom but also building multiple lines of business, and it all starts with reach and visibility, and that's the power of our platform.
And Willie, you know how often people will call into your show or talk to you on the streets and talk about the frustration of finding the games. You're dedicated to your fans. You have to try to break down those obstacles, and Ryan and Lynn have made that really easy. So we're excited about having barrier-free opportunities for people to take on the Preds. As Brian said, there's going to be someone just watching the news that's going to flip over. So someone that maybe hasn't been a huge fan in the past becomes, a passive fan. Passive fan becomes a casual fan, casual to avid, and the avids have no reason not to enjoy every single game. So we're excited about it. And yesterday, I think he was texting to your show as well. Philip from Franklin was blowing me up about our TV. So Adam, I know you and he have a great relationship. You can let him know that you took care of this for him.
Well, you guys touched on it early. Like, for example, last night we're in LA. We're getting ready for the Predators and the Kings. I was keeping an eye on the basketball national championship game on my phone. We know that is a normal thing now, being able to stream. So can you guys explain what options the fans will have in that direction going forward?
Yeah, look, we're really excited about this. It used to be that, it was either linear television or it was streaming. And there's still some people who think that way. Like, you can only do a deal with one and sort of really try and, suffocate the consumer, that they can't go anywhere else. You got to be there. We look at it differently. We want every fan to find every game as easily as possible. And so, and we recognize that not everybody can be home in front of a television at 6 p.m. To watch a game. And so we're going to partner with the Preds here. We're going to stand up a streaming app that will be available to every Preds fan in a 5-state league-approved area. And they'll be able to catch every single game that we put on the broadcast on the Spot 28. Every one of those games will be available live with pregame, postgame, intermission, all the coverage on the streaming. And so people will be able to watch it on their desktop. They'll be able to watch it on their phone, on their tablet. So really easy way for people. And we recognize, look, if you guys are on the East Coast and you're playing the Bruins or the Rangers or the Panthers, and, a 7:00 game there, that's an early start here. And so not everybody can be home yet in front of a television, but the ability to have the game on your phone, now you're able to, still at work, you can kind of prop it up on the corner of your desk by the coffee mug, or if you're at your kid's soccer practice and, now you're able to pull up and watch the first period and a half of the game. And we think then you're totally vested, right? 1-1 game in the middle of the second. Well, when you're leaving soccer practice or you're driving home, you're probably putting the game on the radio. And then you get home, and as dinner's hitting the table, the game's on, in the kitchen or in the house. And so we think what we've done is create a full, fan-friendly proposition that allows fans to just engage everywhere and on whatever device is available and easiest for them.
And, we'll take a step further. When we first started exploring these areas, the conventional thinking was you're going to stream or find a linear partner. And, our very first meeting with Brian, he said, that's nonsense. We're going to do both. And this is why. It's about your fans. It's about bringing people into the viewership audience, and they'll find where to land in the spectrum. And it was the first, broadcast partner that said, no, we're going to take care of it all with you for your fans. It's pretty incredible to find partners like this.
Predators CEO Sean Henry and president of Scripps Sports Brian Lawler have been our guests on D. Mace, Vingen, and Donick to discuss the Predators' new TV deal. As you just heard, all games will be available for free over the air starting next season, which is big news for fans. Sean, Brian, thank you so much for joining us. We'll catch up soon.
All right, guys, thank you. Willie, call a win tonight, all right?
I'll do my best.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks, guys.
It is fantastic news for Predators fans. As you heard Brian Lawler describe there, the other franchises that have partnered with Scripps, Vegas, Florida, Tampa Bay, and Utah, have all seen their ratings skyrocket by being free and over the air. The barriers of finding Predators games will be eliminated starting next season, which is great. I mean, Willie, as I joked with you at the start of the show, you'll never have to hear, where can I watch the Predators game? How do I get that app? How do I download this? You'll never have to worry about that again. I think this is a really big deal for Predators fans in our city. Skylar says, thank God I haven't known how to even watch a Predators game over the last couple of years. Tyler says, I just got so hyped with this announcement. Josh from White House says, now what's the cost to stream these games? Mm-hmm. I assume it's a free app. Isn't that what they just explained?
The way it seems.
I don't know that it will be free. I think it will be a lot less expensive than the latest setup that we've seen. Mm-hmm. I don't know that for sure. I don't think they have released the details on that. I think there have been some teams that have done it streaming for free, but also eventually there's a cost. So I don't know the details. I don't want to speak out of turn on that, but it will be available to those who look for it that way. But I do think I can't say enough about, Adam, what you just brought up. So many people, because we've evolved, and we talk about it on our show from time to time, not just with hockey, but for all sports, right? The ability to watch the games you want to watch has gotten very complicated. Especially if you are a cord cutter, which so many people are, and it's an increasing amount of people that do it that way. So this will be a lot simpler and a lot less expensive to watch your local hockey team.
And I should also mention, Derek, that the entire crew from FanDuel Sports Network, Willie, Chris, Lindsay, Hal, and Kara, will be a part of this new venture as well. So the broadcast crew remains the same.
Yeah. So if I'm understanding this right, say if I have, for those that have, say, YouTube TV, will it actually be inside of that, or do I have to get a separate antenna for my device in order to watch it at home, my television at home? Or will it, like I said, will it actually be, if I turn on my YouTube TV, will it be there as a channel?
I think they are working on partnerships with things like YouTube TV. I don't think currently that's the case, but it. And
So
look,
you would
this is
have to
something that
actually go outside of your. It's just another.
you
It's
just have to
so,
get the antenna.
yeah, you have
and
to
you
go out
have
and get
to.
the antenna. Yeah.
So if you have a TV and you have the antenna, you will get the stations like Channel 5 and the what's the name of the new channel that's going to be Adam this
Spot.
summer? The
Spot.
Yeah, so
Nashville
you would get
28.
that. So you would get the channels that come in over the air, the old traditional way of doing it. So that, I mean, I would need a little tutelage to hook up an antenna to my TV currently. I guess should be simple enough. I know a lot of people already do it that way, and this is, like I was saying, it's becoming the trend, right? A lot of the teams are going in this direction.
Josh on our text line says the channel is already out. I have it on Spectrum TV. It is not on YouTube TV.
Okay.
The Predators have an FAQ. I'll read a couple of these here because I know some of you have some questions. One of the questions, how can I watch games? Quote, Scripps, which owns News Channel 5, will launch a second full power local station in Middle Tennessee branded The Spot, Nashville 28. The channel will launch locally this summer, although Josh says it's already been launched. The channel will be available over the air with an antenna, on cable, and satellite distributors serving the Predators territory, and on News Channel 5 when programming is designated. The channel is free to fans in the local broadcast territory. About the streaming, the Predators and Scripps Sports will be introducing a new direct-to-consumer experience where fans can live stream games throughout the local broadcast territory. More details on the streaming experience will be unveiled soon. So there are some of the details.
I cannot tell you how hard, look.
No, it's very difficult.
People who listen every day, can determine if I have a big ego or not. I think everybody does to a degree. You want to be recognized, you want to be watched, all that stuff. But it is hard when you're talking to a fan as the broadcaster for the team, and they say, "Yeah, I used to get the games, but now I have YouTube TV or such and such, and I can't get them anymore." End of sentence. Right? That would just be a blow to us saying, "Wait, you're a fan of the team, and you can't get the games. You won't get the game. Like you don't want to go through the effort to get to the game." And everybody's had to make those choices over the years. But now I think this is going to open up such a big dimension to those fans who just for whatever reason, budgetary concerns, all of that, your level of fandom, this I think opens it up to a broader audience that will make a big impact.
Justin from Greenbrier, I think, speaks for a lot of fans. The whole deal is exactly what I have wanted. It is so frustrating having ESPN Plus, and I still can't watch the games because of blackouts. This is going to generate so much more fans and revenue for the teams and the NHL as a whole. JD from Nashville says, with all the money I've spent to make sure I have the right platform to watch games, I could have purchased an NHL franchise. 615-737-1025 will take your thoughts on the Predators' new TV deal, which starts next season, free and over the air on Scripps Sports. No more FanDuel Sports Network. It will cease to exist at the end of this season. But don't worry. Willie Donick, Chris Mason, the entire crew will be transitioning over from FanDuel Sports Network to this new venture. Willie's going to be the most popular man in Nashville. Free and over the air, Willie Donick. What could possibly be better? 615-737-1025. Coming up next, we'll stay with the Predators. Scott Wheeler of The Athletic, one of The Athletic's top NHL draft analysts. He recently released his rankings of the Predators prospect system. He has them at number 5. We will discuss all of that with Scott coming up next. 615-737-1025. We are broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. 1025 The Game has teamed up with Pella Windows and the Nashville Humane Association for a puppy pet adoption this Friday at Pella, 256 East Main Street in Hendersonville from 4 to 6. For more details, visit thegamenashville.com/events. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. Let's go to our phone line, driven by Wilson County Hyundai.com, and welcome in the Athletics' Scott Wheeler, who recently ranked the Predators farm system as the 5th best system in the NHL in his annual rankings. Hi, Scott. How are you?
I'm doing well. Just about to pack up for the Frozen Four tomorrow and getting down to Vegas. So looking forward to that.
Outstanding. Well, we're glad to have you back on the show again. So in your write-up on the Predators farm system being the 5th best in the NHL in your annual rankings, you wrote that the Predators are an A plus, prospect away from being the true cream of the crop. And Predators fans are hoping that Brady Martin can be that guy. For our listeners who have not followed Martin's season since the Predators returned him to juniors back in October, what strides has he made in his development?
Well, it's been a bit of a weird year for Brady. He has dealt with a shoulder issue that has kind of persisted for him throughout the season, and he has played through it. He has taken some breaks, but he just hasn't quite been the Brady Martin, at least not consistently, that we maybe expected him to be. He's coming out of a year where he scored 30-plus goals in the OHL in his draft year and was a dominant sort of physical presence in the league. And that is a huge part of his identity, just the open ice hits, the physicality, the edge that he plays with, the competitive drive that he plays with. And when you're not feeling quite 100% physically, it can be harder to play that style. It can also be harder to get to the inside. And he's had some real highs this year. Before aggravating the injury at the World Juniors, I thought he was arguably Canada's best, most consistent forward at the World Junior tournament. He was certainly an important part of their best line with Michael Hage and Gavin McKenna. And he's had some stretches since returning to OHL hockey here where he has looked really, really, really good. But he just hasn't been able to have that sort of 10, 20 game stretch where he takes over and looks like one of the best players in the league this year. And I think part of that is just because he hasn't fully felt himself for much of the season.
Riker Lee, Scott seems to have shot up your rankings this season. What do you think his best case scenario is as an NHL player?
That he went to Michigan State.
Other than going to Michigan State. Derek Mason, a proud Michigan State alum, of course.
Yeah, I mean, I've been pretty bullish on Riker dating back to last year in the draft process. I was higher on him than most and believe that he deserved to be in the sort of top 15, top 20 conversation in last year's draft. Obviously, he goes just outside of that to the Preds. And then this year he makes the jump to the Spartans and joins a line with Eric Nelson and Anthony Romani that was kind of a middle six line for the Spartans behind their 3 big boys of Daniel Russell, Porter Martone, and Charlie Stramel, who kind of made up their first line and one of the very best lines in college hockey. And in that role was their 4th leading scorer behind those 3 big boys and made some of the prettiest plays that were made by any forward in college hockey this year. And that last part is what really defines Riker. He is a highly gifted player with the puck on his stick. They have called him the Wizard, dating back to his Shattuck St. Mary's days. Actually, the Knighty, the coach at MSU, kind of coined it when they used to go and watch him, and he had this spray-painted stick, and he would just dangle and dance his way around the ice and wow you with his stick skills. And he's still doing that. All these years later, he did it at Shattuck St. Mary's in the Minnesota high school prep circuit. He has done it now in the USHL in Madison, and then this year did it at a very high level and was just under a point per game and had a 30-plus point season for one of the better teams in the country. And that part of it is exciting because it's a little of what is lacking when you sort of alluded off the top of that sort of A-plus quality. That A-plus quality is typically a high-end skill guy, and they have up and down their pool, the Preds, that is, have a lot of guys like Brady Martin who are sort of ultra competitive, going to have long careers as very good players in the NHL, Preds fans have already been introduced to Zachary Leroux and Fedor Svechkov and some of the players who have kind of fit this identity for them. And obviously Matthew Wood's a little bit different than that, but the rest of them, in Yegor Surin, who's coming from Russia, the rest of them kind of fit that mold. Yegor is obviously very high on my list and had an excellent year in the KHL, and his competitive DNA is at the sort of the focal point of his game, if you will. With Riker, that's not necessarily I actually think Riker's sneaky competitive and has a little bit more competitive jam than people realize, but it's not central to everything else about his game. Everything else about his game actually revolves around his puck skill and his ability to beat guys 1-on-1, to score goals in tight, to rip his curl and drag wrister, just a sort of special talent with the puck. The big question with Riker Lee has always been about his feet. And I've spoken to him about it. I've spoken to people from the USHL and MSU about it, NHL scouts about it. And that was what, in his draft year, held him from being a top 10, top 15 pick in the class, which is where he belonged from a pure skill standpoint. But I thought he kept up, importantly. I thought he really, really kept up. And the pace of play, the skating was not an issue for him at the college level this year for me, frankly, at all. So that's huge. And then on top of it, he just has a point production ceiling. If he really, truly hits his best case outcome, he's got a point production ceiling that maybe the rest of their forward prospects lack.
We're talking to Scott Wheeler from The Athletic. He has done his prospect rankings, and the Predators are coming at number 5, which is even an improvement from last year. And the deepness of the pool is really the strength of it. Scott, I'd love to hear your process as you evaluate somebody like Matt Wood, who we're watching every night now playing these big games. He's got 16 goals. And so you viewing him as a prospect, knowing a little bit what he's done, scratching the surface here at the highest level, how do you weigh that with, say, a guy like Igor Surin, who's playing, overseas, playing over in Russia? He's younger. That's got to be a difficult process to sort through.
Yeah, I joked when I was in the process of putting together these updated reports and this updated sort of top 15, top 20 prospects for the Preds. I sent out a tweet joking about how I feel like I've been watching Joakim Kemmel, another player that we haven't even mentioned.
Yeah.
I feel like I've been watching Joakim Kemmel for a decade at this point, even though he's only 21. Some of these guys have just been around longer than others. I've familiarized myself with them more than others. I've been watching Zach Leroux since his Halifax Mooseheads days, since his rookie season with the Halifax Mooseheads. I remember being impressed by him at Canada's World Junior Summer Showcase in Calgary years ago. And so there's players that I've seen across different levels, across different events. I've seen them live. I've seen them on tape. There's kids that I've seen a ton over the years. And then you're right. There's kids like Surin, who, because of the war in Ukraine and Russia not participating recently at the U18 and U20 level internationally through the IHF, I have never seen Yegor Surin play live. Very few people in North America who watch hockey for a living have seen him play live, including NHL scouts. So that part of it is tricky. You've got guys like Matt Wood that you mentioned. Like I've watched, I can't even count the number of hockey games I've watched Matt Wood play, whether it's at U18 Worlds, whether it's at the World Juniors, World Junior Summer Showcase, UConn, University of Minnesota, on tape, obviously with the Preds and with Milwaukee. It's just been a long time for Matt. So I know exactly who Matt is as a player. It's really the younger guys. It's the Surins, those types that I have to sort of familiarize myself with and spend more time on and sort of really get a firm hold on so that I can measure them against the Matt Woods that I've seen play a ton. And even Ryan Ufko, who's breaking into the league this year. Like I've been watching Ryan play since his USHL days. Right. So it's definitely a balancing act, balancing some of those 22-year-olds against some of the 19, 20-year-olds, but that's part of the fun.
Scott, so let's take it a little bit further with Matt Wood. You made an interesting observation with him because I thought your description, I was actually talking to Hal Gill about this yesterday, some of those details you wrote, it just was eye-popping for us because we've seen this on display. But you made a great point. There's a difference between being a really good player at the NHL, which it looks like he has a really good chance to be based on what he's doing now, and that real next level guy that moves the needle like 30 goals and things like that. So what's going to separate those two in your mind?
Well, similarly to Lee, they're very different players. They're built different. They've got different bodies. Matt is much taller, but similar to Riker, the question has always been less about puck skill and puck protection and the ability to shoot the puck, and more about the boots and the feet and whether Matt was going to be able to keep up at the NHL level, and not just keep up, but win races. And he has always been able to get going. It's more just that sort of first 2 or 3 steps when he's standing still, where you can see some of the length sort of work against him a little bit. But I think some of the positives of this year have been that it hasn't been a major issue for him. And as a result, you start to wonder, okay, maybe this is a player who can go from being a 20 goal scorer, which is a very valuable player on an NHL roster, to the kind of guy who scores 30 or 32 or 33 goals for you, in which case he's a surefire, clear top 6 player on most teams, right? So that is going to be the challenge, I think, for a lot of the Preds players. We're now beginning to see a lot of them in the NHL. Svechkov I mentioned, LaRue I mentioned. You've seen a little bit of Joakim Kemmel now. Ufko's now made the jump. You've seen a little bit of Schaefer. There are just these guys, and it's okay. Can you be a player on this version of the Nashville Predators, which isn't a playoff team, or at least it doesn't look like a playoff team? Or can you be that player on a version of the Predators that wins playoff series? And that is a very different level, right? So now you've got to separate some of those guys. They've got David Edstrom down in Milwaukee as well, another player who's a center who just looks like he's going to play NHL games, but what kind of NHL games and how high in an NHL lineup? And that's what they've got to sort through. They're going to have to sort through it with Cameron Reed and Tanner Molendyk, 2 defensemen who look a lot alike. There may only be room for one of Molendyk and Reed to become the best version of themselves on the Preds roster of the future, right? And they've got to figure out which one of those 2 players that is. So all sorts of things that they still need to sort out. And they've got the luxury of time with players like Reed, who was just drafted, or Riker Lee, who was just drafted, or Brady Martin, just drafted. But the clock has started to tick on some of those 20-year-olds who have sort of bounced between the AHL and the NHL over the last 12 months.
Scott, real quick before we let you go, and this is probably an answer you could give a much longer one than we have time for, but we discuss all the time the difference in having a deep prospect pool versus maybe a thinner pool, but you have those freaks at the top, those needle movers. The extreme example would be Macklin Celebrini. Barry Trotz calls him the accelerator, right? He's moving their whole franchise forward faster just because of how great one guy is. But what, in your mind, what's the value of having a prospect pool like the Predators have right now?
The value of having a prospect pool like the Preds have right now is that it gives you probably a pretty high floor. Then it's incumbent on you to go and somehow find the next Roman Josi, right? Like the next Pecorine, the next guy who can actually elevate your floor. I think all of these players will give the Predators a very competitive roster. They will give them a roster that plays in close games and all of that. But you need every team that wins this, or almost every team. I think maybe the St. Louis Blues in the late 2010s being the only recent exception, really. And that St. Louis Blues team still had Alex Pietrangelo and others. Ryan O'Reilly playing at an elite level at the time. But you need a superstar. Like you need the Alex Ovechkin or the Jack Eichel or the Connor McDavid or the Nathan McKinnon or the Cale Makar, or you go down the list, right? So that's hard to find without drafting at the very top. Obviously, in Brady Martin at 5th overall, they got pretty close to drafting at the very top. I'm a huge fan Brady, his family, everything about him, the player, the kid. I'm not sure that was the best play for them in terms of elevating their ceiling. And there were others like Porter Martone, who are now seen play excellent hockey after his run at Michigan State, who are now playing in the NHL that were just drafted right sort of in and around him. James Hagens obviously went shortly after to the Boston Bruins and is now playing in the AHL with the Bruins, and was a top 10 finalist for the Hobey Baker this year at Boston College. I think Brady has a chance to be a comparable player to some of those kids, but I do think because the offensive ceiling maybe will never be there, that it's going to be hard for him to truly take the organization forward in a big way. So there's still work to be done to find that player. And that feels, I know Preds fans are probably tired of hearing that, but it kind of feels like that's been the story of the organization, at least at forward. They've had Shea Weber and Roman Yossi and Rene, and they've had those pieces on the back end, but that sort of transformational forward feels like it's always sort of dangling at the end of the carrot, if you will.
Scott Wheeler of The Athletic has been our guest on D. Mace, Vingen, and Donick. I encourage you to read his prospect rankings, but particularly the one about the Predators. Scott ranked them 5th in the NHL. Scott, thank you so much for your time. We're glad to have you back on the show. Have a safe trip to the Frozen Four.
Cheers.
I just want to say one thing before we go to break. Okay? I just want to say one thing. Okay?
You should have saw him over here, Willie. You should have saw him.
You really should have.
We talked about messaging a couple of weeks ago, right? Where if I point out something, people think that I'm being a negative Nelly. That last answer from Scott Wheeler sounds a lot like what I've been saying. But coming from Scott, maybe some of you will listen. That's all I'm going to say. We'll react to more of it when we come back. 615-737-10. I'm just saying. I was sitting here and going,
I didn't even have to be in the room to know what Adam was thinking as he was saying that.
And that was Willie who asked that question. And it wasn't a leading question. It wasn't me asking the question. So I'm just saying, when y'all go, oh, Adam, he's just being negative. Listen to what the expert just said. Okay? That's all I'm saying. 615-737-1025. We'll take your reaction to what Scott had to say. We'll also look ahead to the Predators matchup tonight against the Anaheim Ducks. But you can tee it up with us at the 5th Annual 615 Open, May 28th at Hermitage Golf Course. We are once again supporting Folds of Honor to help them fund life-changing scholarships for families of America's fallen heroes. Register now to play or sponsor at 615open.com. Today, the Nashville Sounds take on Gwinnett, AAA affiliate of the Atlanta Braves. First pitch is at 5:35. Catch all of the action on Sports Talk 830, presented by Family Leisure and Social Cantina. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. We appreciate Scott Wheeler for coming on the program. One texter says, Scott Wheeler telling Preds fans that they will be stuck in the mushy middle without getting that guy. Another texter says, Adam, I'm finally agreeing with you about something. I was furious that the Predators passed up on James Higgins and took Brady Martin. And I don't think I've ever argued, Willie, that the Predators' collection of talent, young talent, I don't think I've ever argued it isn't impressive. As you heard Scott Wheeler there, they've got a foundation. They're going to be able to fill a lineup with a lot of promising young players. But again, the question is, do they have that needle mover? Scott made it sound like at the moment they don't. Predators fans hope that Brady Martin turns into that player. Scott seemed skeptical. And look, the kid's 18, 19 years old, 20 years old. A lot can change over the course of the next several years. But again, I'm being tongue-in-cheek here, sort of, but it is funny how messaging works. When I brought up a couple of weeks ago, when we were having the Sharks versus Predators debate, that all of these teams that won the Stanley Cup over the past 15 or so years had a down period, drafted a top 5 player who helped them win the Stanley Cup. I was accused of building a narrative. But then you hear Scott say something along similar lines. And now maybe people are coming around. But I overall, Willie, I do think that was a really interesting conversation with Scott.
Oh yeah, tremendous conversation. Now, you're leaving out one thing he did say is who are the best players in Predators history? Roman Josi, Pekka Rinne, 2 examples. Those are 2 of the top 5 for sure, regardless of order. Those guys were not first-round picks. Pekka Rinne was a 7th-round pick. Or 8th-round pick, maybe? It was a round that doesn't exist anymore.
I believe it was an 8th-round pick for Pekka Rinne.
I believe it's an 8th-round pick. And
there are only 7 rounds in the NHL draft.
Yeah, they don't even have 8 rounds anymore.
Yes.
But Roman Josi was a 2nd-round pick.
Yes, 8th round in 2004 for Pekka Rinne.
Man.
Roman Josi, 2nd round. So you can get the needle mover without picking high. And that I think that is what the hope is that in this deep pool, you have enough guys that hopefully 1 or 2 will emerge as those cornerstone guys. And then you supplement those guys with other guys that are just good, solid players, and then a few other guys that are steady role players on a team that can win, and you don't have as many holes to have to go out and fill, in other ways through free agency or trades. Also, I think when you get a lot of prospects and a lot of picks, you can package things and get specific needs that you're looking for. So, that's where I was going with that question. I think that's always been, I haven't disagreed with you, Adam, that they don't have a guy that's a can't-miss superstar on the rise, the kind of guy that you get when you pick 1st or 2nd or things like that. But if you read, Scott's write-up of Brady Martin, he has got a lot of great things to say about Brady Martin. And so I think you can be a great winning player even if you're not an absolute super freak.
All right, Rick James. I'm sorry. That's where my mind immediately went.
No, I did too. That's why I started laughing.
Let's.
It's a good song.
It is. It is. Great Chappelle's show sketch as well, but we can't play.
Can't go there.
We can't play that on the air. Anyway, let's talk about the current members of the Nashville Predators. They lost a tough one last night, 3-2. You guessed it, in overtime, more specifically, a shootout against the Los Angeles Kings. Man, the Kings, they've got to be so tired. The number of extra minutes that team has played this season, I would love to know. It's got to be astounding. But the Kings, once again, go to overtime. Kings prevail in the shootout 3-2. The Predators do get that point, but the Kings do leapfrog the Predators for the final wild card spot in the Western Conference. The Predators are back in action tonight, of course. Their final back-to-back of the season against the Anaheim Ducks. Puck drop at 9, pregame at 8, right here on 102.5 The Game. And Willie, when I looked at the wild card race and looked at how all of the teams in the race have been playing recently, it's pretty astounding that no teams have been able to gain significant ground. Over their past 10 games, the Kings have 12 points. The Predators have 13 points in their past 10 games. The Sharks have 11. The Jets have 13. The Blues have 14. So despite the Predators playing better, collecting points, they haven't been able to separate themselves. And I don't like to use the term must-win game unless it's actually a must-win game. Like if the Predators lose this game, they're not making the playoffs or they're going to be eliminated from the playoffs. So I don't like using must-win unless it's actually a must-win. But I do feel like tonight's game against the Ducks is as close as you can get to a must-win without it actually being a must-win, just because the Predators do have to keep pace with the other teams in the Western Conference wildcard race. And it wasn't a great night on the scoreboard for the Predators. They lost in a shootout. The Sharks won in regulation. The Jets won. Also, say bye-bye to the Seattle Kraken. They're done. They're not making the playoffs. But not a good night on the scoreboard either for the Predators. So a big one tonight, which I know we've been saying for basically 2 weeks, but another big one tonight for the Predators.
I thought they played a really good game last night. They had a bit of a shaky first period where UC Soros, I thought, kept them within one. And then the second 2 periods, I thought they outplayed the Kings.
I would agree.
And the Kings got a really good performance from Anton Forsberg, their backup goalie. And I thought he was the difference in the game. I believe he got a steal last night, if I'm not mistaken. And so the Kings figured out a way to win a shootout. That was such a razor's edge kind of thing. It's tough, but I think you have to try to keep your head up. They went 2-0-1 in 3 critical games, and I think you just have to keep going. 5 games. I don't know about tonight any more important than the other 4. I think if you look at the 5 that are remaining, 2 of them are against the Ducks. You've got Utah, you got Minnesota, you got some good teams that you got to play. You got another head-to-head with San Jose. And I just think you have to just keep trying to get as many points as you can. And I feel like there's going to be another twist or two before this thing is over. You feel like the world's going to end when you lose one. You feel like you're on top of the world when you win one. But that's just kind of how it's going right now.
One thing to keep in mind about the Predators, they have struggled in the second halves of back-to-back sets. They have a 3-8-1 record in the second game of back-to-backs. That is the second worst points percentage in the NHL. This is the Predators' final back-to-back of the regular season against the Anaheim Ducks. Puck drop at 9, pregame at 8, right here on 102.5 The Game. 615-737-1025. All right. Yesterday, we talked about perception, and we're going to talk about perception again because there is something that broke right after we went off the air yesterday that is Predators adjacent that I want to discuss, and we will do that next. 615-737-1025. Let me tell all of you that today Vanderbilt baseball takes on Eastern Kentucky at Hawkins Field. First pitch is at 6 p.m. Catch all of the action on 94.9 The Fan. Coverage is presented by Gary Force Acura. D-Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 102.5 The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, and David Janes here with you. Trevor Maddich, ESPN football analyst, will join us in roughly 20 minutes. We'll get into the NFL draft and more with our friend Trevor. Predators GM Barry Trotz will join us, at the top of the hour. By the way, my wife and kids are home, and before I came here, I went to pick them up from the airport. And at one point on the drive, my daughter is wailing in the backseat. My son wants to listen to a song, and we have to turn it up because he can't hear it over his wailing sister. My wife is trying to have a conversation with me, and I was just like, oh, my God, this is too much. And she said, we've only been home for 10 minutes, and you're already overwhelmed. Look, it's been a peaceful, quiet few days. I'm so glad that my family is back, but they threw me right back into the fire. They did not ease me in.
That's your normal.
They did not ease me back in.
That is your normal.
But the two of you know, as parents, that when you've got a few days away from the kids, you want to ease back into it. You want it to be as easy as possible. You don't want it to be cacophonous off the jump.
I like that. But I've always found, like, if I've had those, like, when we used to go for games, and that was my day and a half of just silent. But once it's like I'm going back to reality. So I got to that's reality. This is what's fantasy right here.
Yes.
Having no noise and peace. Reality is when I go back home, it's going to be noise, and you just got to prepare yourself, man.
Well, I was thrown right back into the fire. I love my wife and kids. I'm so glad they're home. It was also loud as hell on the drive home from the airport. So yesterday, we talked about perception. We talked about UC Saros and the perception that he is not a big game goaltender. Today, we are going to discuss the organization as a whole and perception. There is a perception that the Predators are overly fixated on the quote-unquote Predator way. When David Poile retired, the organization brought back Barry Trotz, who helped create the quote-unquote Predator way with David Poile. When Barry Trotz hired a coach, he brought in Andrew Brunette, who famously scored the first goal in franchise history. And as fate would have it, guys, now that Barry Trotz is retiring, there is another former member of the franchise who is suddenly available. Last night, I believe right as we signed off the air, the New Jersey Devils announced that they parted ways with GM Tom Fitzgerald. Fitzgerald, as many of you know, was the first captain in Predators history. He played around 300 games for the franchise. And we can and will discuss Fitzgerald's tenure in New Jersey, which had its ups and downs. But I would strongly advise the Predators to consider how hiring Fitzgerald as their next GM would be perceived. Because this is an opportunity for the franchise to inject some fresh blood into the front office. The day that Barry Trotz announced his retirement, I believe that was in early February. God, that seems like just yesterday. When Barry Trotz announced his retirement, he came on the air, we talked about it. One of the first things I said was, the next GM of this team needs to have zero ties to the organization. And I think the Predators would have a hard time convincing fans that Fitzgerald is the best person for the job. And I know what you're going to say, Willie Donick. You're going to say that teams should not let fans influence their decisions. I get that. All I'm saying is that I think that hiring Fitzgerald would land with a thud because Predators fans want something new. Predators fans want to go outside the family. And I think that hiring Fitzgerald would be, again, perceived as the Predators being stuck in their ways, the quote-unquote Predator way. So, Willie, that's where I am on this. I don't love the idea of Tom Fitzgerald being the next GM of the Predators, not just because of his ties to the organization. We can talk about his resume and all of that, But I do think the Predators should consider the optics when making this decision.
Well, you said a couple of different things. You're not sticking to your guns. You said it was a non-starter yesterday, I believe,
that was my immediate
Twitter.
reaction. Yes.
So you're writing him off because he has ties to the organization.
I want someone with zero ties to the organization, which includes Tom Fitzgerald.
Right. Okay. So when did Tom Fitzgerald last have ties to this organization?
It's been a minute.
Okay. Care to take a guess?
It's been more than 20 years.
2002 is when he was last with the organization. So that's almost a quarter century. Where were you in 2002, Adam?
We don't want to talk about that. We don't want to talk about 13-year-old Adam. 13-year-old Adam was going through a lot of changes.
Oh, man.
13-year-old Adam, and you're saying that because when you were 13, Tom Fitzgerald was with the Predators, that all these years later, 24 years later, he's still too tied to the organization. We got to go outside the family. 24 years, Adam?
When you say it like that, look.
Well, I mean, it's common sense. It's the fact. It's not. So you come up with this perception all the time. He played for 7 different teams when he was a player. He left the organization in 2002. He got traded. He also spent a long time in Pittsburgh for some really successful Penguins teams as their assistant GM before he went to New Jersey. He's been everywhere in the league. He was an assistant GM for Team USA, just won the gold medal. So you're going to cross him off the list because he played for the Predators eons ago. But I look at that as a strength. It's a guy that appreciates Nashville, loves Nashville, and I think is a very legitimate candidate. I'm not saying he is the guy that's going to get the job or should get the job, but to write him off the list just because of this perception thing, when, you know, if his whole hockey arc, he grew up in Billerica, Mass. with Tom Glavine, his cousin is Keith Tkachuk. Like, he's got a really interesting background, and one chapter of a full novel of a hockey life is in Nashville, and you're going to cross him off? That makes no sense at all. That's short-sighted.
Okay, Derek, you rule. You rule.
Look, the way I see it, I think both of you have a point here. What is the sort of the line of demarcation where, you know, you can't have, where after so many years, you can't, you know, be a part of this organization moving forward? Meaning, is it 5 years? Is it 10 years? Is it 20 years? You know, because eventually,
if you receive the paycheck from the Predators, you're
cannot
out.
Yeah, you're because we've all seen this. Everybody is recyclable. And just because, and Willie said he played for 7 other teams, or he played for 7 teams.
Yes,
so
he
has tentacles everywhere.
He has a lot of front office experience outside of Nashville.
Exactly. So if he was like Barry Trotz, basically, you know, you spent a big portion of your, you know, of your career coaching here in Nashville, I can see that. But he's nowhere near Barry Trotz.
Here's what I'll say as well.
So I'm neither disagreeing with you, or agreeing with Willie, but I'm just saying
we'll let the texters decide. 615-737-1025. We'll see what the texters think. But Derek,
24.
Derek seems to be on the fence. But let me
24 months. 24.
Hold on.
Not 24 hours.
Hold on. I hear you.
5 Olympiads.
Hold on. You get a bell for Olympiads. All right. So I would be more open to Fitzgerald, despite the previous ties, if his tenure in New Jersey was better than it was. So let's just talk about Fitzgerald's tenure in New Jersey. The Devils were 230, 212, and 44 over parts of 7 seasons under Tom Fitzgerald. That's a .519 points percentage. In those 7 seasons, the team made 2 playoff appearances in 2023 and 2025. They won 1 series in those 2 playoff appearances. And here's something else as well. I don't pretend to know everything about Tom Fitzgerald's tenure in New Jersey, but I reached out to someone who would know. ESPN's Greg Wyshynski, friend of the station, joins Chase and Big Joe every week. Greg is based in the Northeast. He has a lot of connections in the Devils front office. He's famously a Devils fan. And I reached out to Greg this morning, and I asked him to summarize Tom Fitzgerald's tenure as GM of the Devils. I will read some of it. He said it was, quote, mixed. He mentioned, quote, I think Fitz built some teams with good intentions, but circumstances, Jack Hughes' injuries, inexplicably bad goaltending, undercut them. I think he deserves all the criticism for his drafting, which was terrible, and that led to them having a weak supporting cast. Greg also mentioned that he, quote unquote, absolutely botched the Quinn Hughes situation. So to me, Fitzgerald's tenure in New Jersey was unimpressive. So I think hiring Fitzgerald after, again, what I would call, my words, an unimpressive tenure as GM, and then on top of that, him just so being the first captain in franchise history, I think that would be a really tough sell for Predators fans. That's part of my argument. If his tenure, I mean, of course, if his tenure was sparkling, he wouldn't have been let go. But his time in New Jersey was okay. And I think if you hire someone whose tenure was okay, again, Willie, I know that you disagree with the perceptions that I've been putting out there, but you also don't live in a silo. You know that these perceptions exist. I'm not just pulling them out of my rear end. So I think that the team hiring Fitzgerald as the chief decision maker after an unimpressive run in New Jersey, having the fact that he is a part of the family, quote unquote, again, I just think it would be a really tough sell.
But I don't know why the part of the family way back, he was the first captain of the team, right? So first of all, he is a revered hockey guy, right? And so the fact that he was the first captain of the team should be a strength and not a, oh my God, run the other direction, especially given that it was 24 years ago. I do think that the Devils' tenure is an interesting one because when he took over, they were pretty much they weren't good. They were a team that had tried to restart some things, had to, they were going through a long dry spell after they got to the Stanley Cup final in 2012. They kind of fell on some hard times, spun their wheels for a while, and then that's when Tom Fitzgerald came in. True?
That sounds
so
right.
He didn't take over a team that was on the verge of winning. He took a team that had to do some building. So when you do that, we've talked about it over and over. It's not as easy as people think, and it takes a long time. And it started to come together a few years ago. They won 52 games and beat the Rangers in the first round of the playoffs. From there, that's when it has gone sideways, surprisingly to me. They should have been in a window to start winning year after year with Jack Hughes and all the things they did to build. But I think Greg points out some of the stuff that didn't go according to plan there. And the goaltending is probably the biggest thing. And then a close second would be some major injuries. Jack Hughes has had trouble staying on the ice. He's had too many injuries that it really hurt them. So you put those two things together, not staying healthy and having bad goaltending, some of that is on the GM, some of it's not. And I'm not saying Tom Fitzgerald should be the number one candidate. I'm just saying he should be in the mix with everybody else. I think most of the guys who have been former GMs that are interviewing for the Predators job, you're going to have a mixed bag. Otherwise, they wouldn't be available.
My viewpoint is this. I like the idea of an up-and-comer piloting the Predators as they continue transitioning to a new core. I will not pretend to know everything about the assistant GMs who Elliot Freeman mentioned to us last week have interviewed for the job, such as Scott White from Dallas or Brett Peterson from Florida. But here's what you can, I think, pull from those names. Brett Peterson has been part of an incredibly successful organization. The Florida Panthers are going to miss the playoffs this season. But before that, they went to three consecutive, Stanley Cup finals and won back-to-back Stanley Cup championships.
Yeah, but can't I say the same thing about Tom Fitzgerald, the assistant general manager? Same thing. Pittsburgh. What's different?
It didn't happen as recently.
So what does that matter?
We talked about this with Peter Chiarelli. You mentioned Peter Chiarelli won the Stanley Cup in
you're
Boston.
Talking about a guy that's never been a GM, that right now has got this pristine image of he's most recently been with a really successful franchise. But that was Tom Fitzgerald. That's what got.
But Tom Fitzgerald has been a GM, and it wasn't a great experience overall for the New Jersey.
Okay, but how do you know it would be any different for any assistant GM who's a first-time GM? Just like Mike Borgonzi, we're going to find out if he's going to be a successful NFL GM. You don't know.
Sure. But I would rather
you'd rather have a guy that hasn't screwed up anything because he's been the second in command, and you think that's a better hire. I'm just saying I'm open to both.
I like the idea of a young GM growing with a team. We talked with Scott Wheeler in the previous hour. We have established that the Predators have an impressive array of young players. They are going to be transitioning to a new core sooner rather than later. I personally like the idea of the Predators' next GM being a young, new GM who can help with that transition, that can grow with the roster. Scott White from Dallas.
Right.
Scott
White.
White.
I would say that Tom Fitzgerald, having done it in New Jersey, is valuable experience, even if it didn't go perfect. It didn't go terrible, right? They had some big hits, and they've had some disappointment that they haven't been able to take it to the next level. But he's been through the process, unlike a guy who they could hire that's never been a GM before. Is that fair?
I understand your point on the experience. I do. I'm telling you that let me continue with my point here as we transition to Trevor Matich in just a few minutes. Scott White, the assistant GM of the Dallas Stars. The Dallas Stars have not gotten over the hump. We've talked about that. But you've noted this, Willie, many times. They have consistently been one of the best teams in the Western Conference over the past several years. And what's the one thing about the Dallas Stars we always bring up? The fact that they've never truly been bad, right? And yet they have found these fantastic players in the late first round, in the second round, even later. Jason Robertson, Wyatt Johnston, Rope Hintz, Jake Ottinger. The Predators, I think the Predators want to emulate that model because the Predators don't want to rebuild. They don't want to be bad. They don't want to draft at the top of the draft. The Stars have only done that, I think, once to get Miro Heiskanen, if I'm not mistaken, and yet they are a competitive team every year. So I like pulling from those trees, the Florida Panthers, Dallas Stars trees, versus going with a retread. And there are a lot of retreads in the NHL.
But that's what the Devils did when they hired Tom Fitzgerald. He had that exact resume with the Penguins.
One texter says, does Willie have a law degree? Because, my God, he's dominating this debate. I don't think Willie has a law degree as far as I know. But we'll continue.
Do you need a law degree to debate? I don't think so.
Chuck on our text line. We'll take some quick text and then we'll get to Trevor. Chuck on our text line says, Tom Fitzgerald has never put anything on the table that is consistent with winning. I don't want Predators connection anymore. I want freshness. Dave says, Predators need an up-and-coming assistant GM, not a retread. One texter says, John says, Tom Fitzgerald hasn't done anything amazing during his time as a GM. I would rather have someone who has no experience and could be a rising star. So a lot of fans on different sides of this. We'll continue to take your reaction. 615-737-1025. But coming up next, Trevor Matich will join us. We'll transition to the NFL draft with our friend Trevor coming up next. 615-737-1025. Join 1025 The Game and catch the biggest golf tournament of the year at 5 Iron Golf, located at 202 21st Avenue South in Nashville. 1025 The Game will be broadcasting live all day from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Thursday and Friday. Stop in and enjoy great food, golf prizes, and more with fellow fans from start to finish. Don't miss it, only at 5 Iron Golf.
Hey, this is Derek Mason, and you heard me tell you about Dr. Lodge and his staff over at Cool Springs MD for some time. If you set out to lose weight, chances are it's not your first time setting a goal to shed some extra pounds only to face disappointment. But I got some good news because at Cool Springs MD, Dr. Lodge and his team understands the frustration of this cycle, and that is why they offer a different approach to weight loss. Their comprehensive weight loss program is led by Dr. Jeffrey Lodge and addresses the root cause of weight gain with tailored nutrition, exercise, blood test supplements, and more. They will customize a program specific to you and you only. So connect with Dr. Lodge at CoolSpringsMD.com today to schedule your appointment for a personalized weight loss plan just for you. That's Cool Springs MD, where your weight loss journey becomes a success story.
D-Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 1025 The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. Let's go to our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, and welcome in our friend Trevor Maddich, who is brought to you by Houston Clinic Orthopedics, when experience matters. Hi, Trevor. How are you?
Adam, I'm great. How are you?
We're doing well. Thank you so much for joining us, as always. So we've asked you over the past few weeks about Sonny Styles out of Ohio State University. And I stumbled across an interview that Styles did with Kay Adams on her podcast. And he talked about how he would love to play a Kyle Hamilton type role in the NFL, of course, referring to Ravens star safety Kyle Hamilton. Do you think Styles, with his background as a safety, now he's a linebacker, do you think Styles could successfully play a Hamilton type role in the NFL?
I think he absolutely could, because of that safety experience and because of his freakish height, weight to speed. I mean, he runs about a 4.46 40, even though he's about 235 pounds and around 6'4", 6'5". And so he is basically, Sonny Styles, a safety with the speed of a wide receiver playing middle linebacker at middle linebacker size, or small middle linebacker size in terms of weight. And so he's a hybrid athlete that you just don't see very often. If you look at Kyle Hamilton, I mean, when he was in the combine in 2022, he ran about a 4.6 40, just under 4.6 in the high 4.5s. And so Sonny Styles is actually significantly faster than Kyle Hamilton. And we see that Kyle Hamilton has been such a game record himself with the Ravens because of his unique combination of size and burst and recognition and instincts. And Sonny Styles has all of those things, except he's bigger and he's stronger and he's faster. And so I can see the Titans or whoever drafts him putting him in that kind of a role. Now, keep this in mind, that he can have that kind of a role also from an off-the-ball linebacker position. That's the way that the Bears kind of used Brian Urlacher, who in college at New Mexico would line up deeper than a middle linebacker, but more shallow than a safety would be typically. And from there, he would just go downhill and wreck the play. And so Sonny Styles, he could have a scheme kind of tweaked for him so he could do the same kind of thing. And you could put him back a little farther off the ball because he's so fast. He can make up the difference and still meet the running back at the line of scrimmage if he needs to with a full head of steam. I think that is a great comp for him, with the exception that he's bigger, stronger, faster than Kyle Hamilton.
Trevor, yesterday we were talking about a conversation that your ESPN colleague Mina Kimes was having on her podcast about Jeremiah Love. And it led to us having the discussion of whether we've been exaggerating the potential impact of Jeremiah Love on not only the Titans, but whichever team decides to take him. Mina Kimes has been chatting about this with followers on X today, and she said something interesting that we're going to talk about a little bit more, I think, tomorrow. She said, quote, "I think a B-plus receiver is more valuable than an A-plus running back when it comes to the development of a young quarterback." Where do you stand on that?
I absolutely disagree. I think both are valuable for different reasons, but B-plus receiver will catch, 5-6 passes in a game? And that might be a lot for some games. And a B-plus receiver is not the kind of player that defenses have to game plan for. So they'll be out there doing their thing, and the quarterback will be able to hit that guy with regularity and move the chains. Okay, yay, that's good. But an A running back, like we expect Jeremiah Love to be in the NFL, will touch the ball somewhere between 12 and 18 times a game, probably more, with a third of those at least being passes, as many receptions as you would likely give to your B-plus receiver. And the defense will have to game plan for that running back, especially if he's like Jeremiah Love and has the speed and the skills to be able to be a pass catcher out of the backfield, or move out to the wing, the H-back position, or move to the slot, or even go all the way wide. Somebody's got to follow him out there. And the problem is that if you keep a linebacker in there to stop Jeremiah Love on the run, then that linebacker is going to have to be the guy that's going to have to follow him out while he goes outside. And there's no way that guy's going to keep up with Love as a pass receiver the wider he goes. And so it creates matchup problems that defensive coordinators have to game plan for. Whereas you don't game plan for a B-plus receiver. Now, having said that, their free agent signing, Wan'Dale Robinson from the Giants, is kind of like that B-plus receiver, maybe even better. He's had over 90 catches each of the last 2 years for the Giants. He's a little guy. He's about 5'8", but he gets open and he catches the ball. And when he's got it, if he's got a little bit of space, he's pretty shifty after the catch. And why that's important is because it allows Cam Ward to be able to throw the ball on high percentage throws that move the chains and allow the play caller to get into a play calling rhythm. Because part of the problem with the Titans offense in recent years has been they go 3 and out or 5 and out, and there's no real rhythm to the play calling now because they're off the field too soon. Whereas that kind of a receiver like Robinson is can help you keep the chains moving. But then you get that A running back like we expect Jeremiah Love to be, and all of a sudden you've got all kinds of threatening things you can do to him that make the defense have to take notice.
We'll talk with Trevor Maddich, ESPN and ESPN NFL analyst as well as college football. Now, Trevor, I've always wondered this because each draft sort of tells its own story, but within that story, there's always a run on a particular position. This year, what position do you believe there will be a run on? And do you predict it comes early or is it later in the draft? And when I mean later, I'm talking about second and third round.
Yeah, that's a great question, Derek. This year's draft is strong in receivers, and I think you're going to see a run on them in the late first round and then into the second round. Chris Brazzell is one of those guys, the Tennessee wide receiver, who's tall, he's fast. He ran in the 4.3s, I believe, in the combine. He's shown he can get downfield and finish on deep passes, and that kind of a deep threat that could take the top off the defense with legitimate speed and legitimate height is very valuable. And so will he go in the first round? I don't know that he'll go in the first round because Tennessee didn't use him with a lot of sophisticated route trees. They used him basically to go run deep down the field. In the NFL, he'll need to be able to do more than that. So that might bounce him down a little bit as teams try to evaluate whether he can do that. But he's one of those receivers in a group that includes Casey Concepcion of Texas A&M, Denzel Boston, who's a big beast out of Washington, Omar Cooper Jr. out of Indiana, who had just a stellar season in their national championship year. I think all those guys are going to cluster somewhere late first and then into the second round. I think that the edge rusher is another position that you're going to see runs on because this is also a pretty deep group of edge rushers. Not to say that they're all elite individual pass rushers, but you've got a whole bunch of guys that can line up out wide and go get after the quarterback if that's all they're asked to do. And I think once you start to get a couple of those go, I think teams don't want to let that get away because if you hit on an edge rusher in the late first, second round, third round especially, you really have a diamond because that's one of the premier positions in the NFL. Normally to get that elite guy, you got to take him high in the first round. But there's enough guys that some of them that are outside the first round are going to have really strong careers. I just can't tell you which ones will. I can tell you which ones I think have a good chance, but I think teams are going to be looking at that because of the premium nature of the position. And there's a bunch of them that can do stuff as a pure pass rusher.
Now, Borgonzi spoke at I believe it was at the owners' meetings. And he talked about there could possibly be 2 rookies starting on the offensive line. And when you look at this crop of guards in this year's draft led by Penn State's guard, how do you rank this position, coming into this year's draft?
I think that there are a couple of guys that I think you could plug in and call them, good chance that they'll be starters in the league in their first 2 years, let's say. The thing is, though, after that, there are plenty of weaknesses. I mean, there's an awful lot of guards that are, and centers is the same way, that are either really strong maulers, but that aren't particularly fleet of foot. And when you get them out into a little bit of space, they tend to get behind and they struggle a bit. Then you've got guys that are really athletic, but they need to develop a lot of lower body strength to drop anchor in the NFL. And whether or not they can actually do that sufficiently is a risk that you're taking, and you're just projecting on them greater strength than they have now. Everybody gets stronger in the NFL, but a lot of guys in these big conferences, if they're not pretty strong now, it gives you a little bit of pause, right? And the guy at Penn State you're talking about is Venga Ioane. And he's one of those guys with amazing power. I mean, he's a mauler. He's incredible that way. But quicker pass rushers give him some trouble. And guys that are quick to flow give him a little bit of trouble. Manuel Pregnon of Oregon kind of is the opposite. He's a guy that's really athletic. He's got long arms. He's got good technique. But the problem is his lower body mass isn't there so much. That's one of the reasons I kind of like Keelan Rutledge, the Georgia Tech guard, who a lot of people have kind of mocked to the Titans either in the second or third round. I mean, he's one of those physical maulers. His footwork isn't necessarily elite, but from a pass protection standpoint, people aren't getting around him much. And in the pre-draft process, he's played some center as well. So if he doesn't come in and start right away at guard, they may want him to give it a chance to compete at center, because I think he'd be a better center than he would be a guard. So these are all risks that you have to take based on the projected vulnerabilities of these guys.
Now, with that being said, Trevor, would you be surprised if the Titans went, at least in the first 3 rounds, all offensive guys led by who I want them to draft, Jeremiah Love, but then they go offensive line?
They could. The thing is, though, right now, is there an elite left tackle that they would take with the 4th pick? And the answer to that is, I think, probably no. I mean, Spencer Fano of Utah is a guy that will be taken probably in the top 10, but at number 4, I think that might be a bit of a reach there. And that's just my opinion, but I kind of think so. The other offensive lineman, kind of at the top of the draft, tackle Francis Maui. Oh, come on, what's his name? Maui something of the University of Miami, and he's terrific at tackle. I think he'd be even better at guard. But do you really want your left guard to be Peter Skoronski at the 11th pick in the draft, and your right guard to be Francis Maui Noah at number 4 pick in the draft? I don't think that's where you want to invest, at the guard position that high. So I think that they'd be looking at interior offensive line, later in the draft. Now, keep this in mind, though. I've been thinking that, we're hearing so much about Jeremiah Love to the Titans, and it makes great sense. There's been a lot of mocks that have Jeremiah Love to the Titans, and those guys doing the mock drafts have contacts. It's not like they're just pulling this out of thin air. And it makes me wonder if the Titans are letting it be known that they love Jeremiah Love because they really are looking at somebody else like Sonny Styles, a linebacker out of Ohio State or something, because right behind them at number 5, and then at number 7, you've got the Giants and then the Commanders, who Jeremiah Love would make a ton of sense for, who they may, if they think that the Titans are going to take him at number 4, they may want to trade up. And the Titans can still get the kind of player that they need at number 5 or number 7.
Trevor Matich has been our guest on D-Mace, Vingan, and Donick. He joins us every Tuesday, and he is brought to you by Houston Clinic Orthopedics, when experience matters. Trevor, as always, a pleasure. We'll catch up next week.
Thanks, Adam.
615-737-1025. Let's continue the Sonny Styles conversation, because Teron Davenport brought up Sonny Styles yesterday with us. Trevor Matich brought up Sonny Styles. It seems that Sonny Styles has been gaining some momentum as the draft nears in a few weeks. 615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025 The Game.
don't be surprised if Sonny Styles and Carnell Tate both go in the top 5.
Wow.
It's different when you sit back and listen to people in the league. You can hear in the inflection, the tone, talking about Styles. Like everyone's like, look at him in person. He's an absolute freak athlete. It's not going to be 2 to the Jets, but maybe it's the Cardinals with a surprise pick or a team moving up. Like teams love him that much. And then there's Carnell Tate in that conversation. It's kind of the same. It's like he was this, and then he grew into this. And then this year, he had 0 drops. His contesteds went from the 50s to the 80s. He's the only one where it's like, yeah, I can't get that. I can get a version of it's not as good as Mekhi Lemon or Jordan Tyson in round 2 if I've got to get my tackle or my edge. Tate's, when I have conversations with people in the league, it's different.
That was Todd McShay talking about Carnell Tate, who we discussed yesterday, and Sonny Styles, who we're discussing right now. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. Predators GM Barry Trotz will join us at the top of the hour as the Predators are back in action tonight. But, Derek, it seems like there's some momentum building toward Sonny Styles at number 4. We've talked so much about Jeremiah Love, but we had Teron Davenport on the show yesterday. He brought up Sonny Styles. Trevor Maddich has spoken glowingly of Sonny Styles. I read today on ESPN.com some NFL draft comps to current NFL pros. Sonny Styles, according to Matt Miller, compares to Fred Warner, the linebacker from the San Francisco 49ers. And guess who coached Fred Warner quite a bit? Robert Saleh. So Robert Saleh, theoretically, would know how to use Sonny Styles in his defense. So, to me, I don't think it would be an out-of-the-box selection.
He's a rangy kid. In this defense, he's more like a Keith Bullock, I believe. Keith was rangy, sideline to sideline, could blitz if he need to. He was a complete linebacker. And, I don't know what Keith ran in a 40 at the combine. I'm just assuming it wasn't a 4.46. So with that being said, he would be a little bit more faster. He would be faster than a Keith Bullock, but essentially it would play that role where I can put you anywhere on the field, whether it's like Fred Warner or Kyle Hamilton, just put you on anywhere on the field and we know you will impact, whether it's, with your hand in the dirt, whether it's standing up, whether we rotate you and let you play safety, we can put you just about anywhere. We can disguise and put you anywhere. And that is valuable to a defense to have a sort of a hybrid type, because this is a guy that was a former safety. I think Keith was a former safety as well before switching to linebacker. So I wouldn't drafting Sonny Styles this would help the team. And obviously it would help Cam Ward because your defense becomes that much better. So it's not like I'm saying, if you draft Styles, you're going to go completely wrong because I feel you should draft Jeremiah Love. No, it's just a different type of impact you're going to get now. In Cam's sort of development, it'll still be there, but he just won't have the weapon that could help him expedite it a little bit faster.
Willie, Sonny Styles had a 43.5-inch vertical leap at the NFL Combine. To put that into context, it was better than Calvin Johnson's vertical jump at the Combine in 2007. So Sonny Styles is a freak of nature. He is a physical freak.
I thought you were setting me up. I thought you were going to
a super freak. He's a super freak.
That is a super freak tactic right there.
Yes,
that's a super freak characteristic.
That is true. I'm beating myself up for missing that obvious layup.
Jeez, I thought we were on the same wavelength there, Adam.
I apologize. But he is a super freak. You are absolutely correct.
Well, and I think that is really what this decision comes down to when you're picking 4th. If you're going to stay at 4, You don't need to be talking about B+ wide receivers. You need to be looking for the super freak, right? If you think Love's the super freak, by all means. If you think Sonny Styles is a super freak, that's the guy you want. You need a guy that the minute that game is announced, Titans versus X is saying, all right, I gotta deal with this super freak right here. What are we gonna do? That's who you want.
Derek, as I mentioned to Trevor, Sonny Styles was on Kay Adams' show, and he talked about Kyle Hamilton. As you mentioned, Sonny Styles, a converted safety, played off-ball linebacker at Ohio State. And Styles said that he hopes to play a similar role as Hamilton does in Baltimore. Here's part of what he said. Quote, I think it just depends what coordinator you go to, what scheme you go to. You know, Kyle Hamilton is one of those guys that can do a lot all over the field. He's an amazing player. So I'd love to be in a scheme where I can do multiple roles and help a defense win. I think what's nice about having a coordinator who's able to put you in so many different positions and utilize you in that way, it's helping the entire defense because you become more unpredictable when there's guys like that on your defense who could do so many different things.
Well, he's right, but I think, you know, what we don't know now is, can he cover? Because Kyle Hamilton covers. So can he, if you want to be a Kyle Hamilton type player, you got to be able to cover in the secondary, whether it be tight ends, running backs. You have to be able to do that. That's what ultimately, you know, makes your defense versatile. Well, I don't have to get a nickel package. I can just bring my safety down and allow him to cover your back or your tight end. If he can do that, then yeah, he would develop into a Kyle Hamilton type guy, because Kyle was doing this when he first got in the NFL. So he's more of the Fred Warner, a version of Keith Bullock in a sense, where there may not be asking you to, you know, be Kyle Hamilton, but you're doing some of the things that allows Kyle Hamilton to be a great player. You are doing some of those things, but I don't think they're going to, at least until he's able to show it, Sonny Styles, if the Titans do indeed draft him, that, you know, you're going to go out and be this sort of Swiss Army knife. It would be great if he does develop into that if the Titans do draft him, but he would fit more so, I guess, in the Fred Warner type of role, because Salah's already talked about it. He needs somebody that can go sideline to sideline and be able to cover a wide area of the field.
Quickly, Matt on our text line says, can y'all explain to me the balance of taking the best available player on the board versus what you actually need? Explain it to me like I'm in 5th grade, LOL.
It's basically saying if there's a running back there that I need running back, if he's there, I can even take that guy, which I need, or, for instance, Sonny Styles, who we may not need. This is just an example. We may not need Sonny Styles, but he is the best player left in the draft. The best
prospect, regardless of position.
So are you going to take that guy that you need because of that position? Or are you just going to take the best overall guy and just plug him in?
And Willie, sometimes teams get in trouble drafting for need versus drafting the best player available on the board.
Yes. And I also think that the Titans have very few position groups where they're completely set. And that allows them, I think, to even have an easier time picking the best player available. But obviously you wouldn't pick the quarterback.
No.
If you just picked the quarterback with the first pick last year. So that would be an obvious example of where you wouldn't take necessarily the best player available.
615-737-1025. We'll take your thoughts on Sonny Styles and the NFL draft. When is the first round of the NFL draft? It needs to hurry up. Let's take a look. The first round of the NFL draft is April 23rd. 16 days away. Will we make it? Will we make it 16 more days? I don't know. We'll see. But we've got 16 more days of content to fill on the NFL draft, which we will do because this is our job and we love you. 615-737-1025. But coming up next, Predators GM Barry Trotz will join the program. The Predators have a back-to-back situation. They lost last night in a shootout to the LA Kings. They are in Anaheim tonight, taking on the Ducks in their final back-to-back of the season. Another big one for the Predators. We'll talk about that and more with Barry Trotz coming up next. 615-737-1025. Our offseason football coverage of the Tennessee Titans and more is presented to you by Tennessee Brewworks. Raise a glass with Tennessee Brewworks, proud partner and official craft beer of the football offseason coverage here on 1025 The Game. D-Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 102.5 The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, and David Janes here with you. We will soon be joined by Predators GM Barry Trotz, and when he does join us, he's calling right now. He will be presented by Green Ventures Landscaping and Gary Force Acura. The Predators are back in action tonight against the Anaheim Ducks, their final back-to-back of the regular season. Puck drop at 9, pregame at 8, right here on 102.5 The Game. Yet another big one for the Predators. They lost in a shootout 3-2 to the Kings last night. So let's go to our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, and welcome in Predators GM Barry Trotz. Hi, Barry. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
We're doing well. Thank you so much for joining us as always. So the Predators have 5 of 6 points so far on this road trip out west. Another big one tonight against the Ducks. What have you liked about the team's play so far on this trip? And what are some areas of improvement that you'd like to see as the playoff race comes down to the wire?
Well, I think just the resiliency. I mean, it was, a good example is last night. That was one hell of a hockey game. That was a playoff hockey game. It was discipline. Both teams were really going at it. I just like our compete level, our focus, our preparation. I like the fact that.
Did we lose Barry? There he is.
Hello?
Sorry, I thought I lost you for a second. Please continue.
Yeah, I just think everybody is all in. And, right now we're getting, good goaltending. Our defense, is banged up a little bit, is continuing to step up and play well. Our discipline is good. And I just think that, the guys that are relied on to carry our team are doing that. And the young guys who are getting, are under fire, learning under fire at the highest level, are doing a great job. So coaches are doing a good job. So I just like the fact that, we're going into playoff style games, the last 3, obviously 2 with LA and San Jose, and they've been intense. Playoff hockey, which is just a great thing to be a part of this time of year.
Steven Stamkos scored his 39th goal of the season on the power play to tie the game in the second period last night against the Kings. He's on the verge of his 8th career 40-goal season. Barry, had someone told you on November 24th, when Stamkos had 4 goals in 22 games, that he could hit 40 by the end of the season, what would you have said?
I would say that'd be a stretch, but knowing the career of Steven Stamkos and the ability to score goals, I would have said with a caveat that if he got hot, he could do it.
I do want to ask you about something around the NHL. You would know this better than anyone, considering your long and successful coaching career. Coaches in the NHL, oftentimes their tenures are short. You know that. But how surprised are you that 2 teams, the Golden Knights and the Islanders, in the past week have fired their coaches this late in the season when both of those teams, I believe, at the time of the change, were in playoff spots?
It is I would say it's an anomaly. You haven't seen that in the past very often. I think there's probably one-offs over the course of time, but I think it's just the parity. It's the pressure of, the teams, the organizations have of getting into the playoffs, ownership, fan bases, all the above. And, with the salaries going up and the evaluations of the teams, there's a lot more pressures within the organizations to be successful and to make the playoffs and to be there. And, every team has their own expectations and every team has their own path.
Barry Trotz is with us, and Barry, it's been so intense watching these games to start this road trip here, and like you said last night, that had all the tension throughout. It was tight all the way through. Both teams had those great chances. I'm curious, in your mind, as you've watched Andrew Brunette go through this whole journey this year with this group and readjusting after the trade deadline the way they have. How would you evaluate Andrew Brunette and the coaching staff's performance here?
I think they've done a great job. It was funny, we got a little bit of not a day off, but, obviously we played last night and we played tonight. But, we just didn't go to the rink. And you saw the interaction of the players and the coaches. I mean, that is a tightly knit group. I think the coaches, after the 6-12 and 2 start, you would probably say that there's, where we are right now has been a little bit of a miracle, but at the same time, it's not a miracle because I really believe that the coaches adjusted, the coaches and the players. I always felt that there was a partnership, and I see it on a daily basis, which, we get in my position, and when you're traveling with the team, and Willie, you see it as well when you're traveling. This group is tied together. They're connected at the hip. They want success together, and they enjoy being a group, and they're trying to do something that a lot of people didn't expect, especially after the first 20 games. And the doubters, there's a lot of doubt about our club, where we are and what we're trying to accomplish. But you see it's starting to come together with the young guys playing and developing under fire, the older guys performing and doing what they do in terms of their leadership and their cultural pieces that they add to our organization. It's what we envisioned. It was the sort of the transition that we felt we had to make if we're going to build this team and this new core and still be competitive. And it's a fun time right now to be playing important games. And I don't know how this is going to end. Hopefully we can get to where we wanted to get to in the playoffs, but it's been exactly what you want from an organization standpoint of young players and old players becoming connected. And, that was the goal when we all set out.
There were 5 rookies in the lineup last night for the Predators. And I'm just really curious. You've mentioned that's a really high number for any team, but just an example of what you're talking about. Let's just take, Matt Wood, who is playing he's 21. There are times that you can see the other team on the road, especially saying, let's test Matt Wood. Let's put an Anze Kopitar out there and see if he can handle a veteran like that. So you put these guys into stressful situations. How much better is that for their development as opposed to maybe on a team where you're playing 5 rookies, but your team may be completely out of it and the games don't quite have that same level of intensity?
Yeah, it's way different. I mean, there's 2 times last night, be it icing calls or obviously they had the last change. We actually had, for the most part, I would consider 5 Milwaukee Admirals on the ice. We had Ufko and Willsby on the back end, and we had Svechkov with Schaefer and Kemmel, and the LA Kings countered with Drew Doughty and I think Dumoulin on the back end, or Clark. And then they had Panarin and Kopitar and Kempe, which is as good a line as there is in the National Hockey League. And they're lining up basically against a lot of guys that, at the start of this year were, Milwaukee Admirals at certain points. So it's a stress test for our young guys, but what a great way to develop in stressful situations. I mean, they're learning on the fly and they're doing a great job. And I sometimes you feel like you're over your skis and, underwater a little bit, but at the same time, you learn to handle those stressful situations and come out as a better player, as a better team. It is actually really, as a general manager, it is nice to watch that the young guys are responding and the old guys are there's no blame. They love the young guys, the energy they bring, and they're trying to help them along when they can.
Barry, we had Scott Wheeler from The Athletic on earlier today on the show, and last week we referenced this. Now we know where you guys fall. The Athletic has you guys, for what it's worth, number 5 in the prospect pool. And he had some really interesting things to say about Brady Martin, who he rates as the Predators' number 1 prospect. I'm wondering what you're seeing. And Adam put the question to him well. We saw him early, 3 games in. We haven't really seen him since, other than the World Juniors where he got hurt, but you guys have watched him much closer. How do you think his development has gone from then until now?
Well, I think it's been up and down a little bit, and I would say because of the injury factor that's played into it. One thing that you saw the impact that he had with his junior team leading up to the World Juniors. You saw the tremendous impact that he had on Team Canada. He was sort of I'll say the lightning rod. He was the straw that stirred the drink a little bit for Team Canada, and he got injured in the tournament. And as soon as he got injured, the whole demeanor of Team Canada changed. And that tells me that you've got a player that has a unique quality, an ability to bring something to the team that is a little bit unique. And then you're seeing it. Obviously, he had a shoulder injury for the people that don't know out there. He missed a lot of time. He came back. I think just trying to catch up to a little bit of a moving train, and then the playoffs started, and he's in on 75% of their scoring. They played a very good London Knights team, and he was targeted by the London Knights to physically and try to hit physically, emotionally, all the things to disrupt his ability to lead a team. And he came through and dominated in the series. Everybody I've talked to, not only from our club, but some other clubs that have seen him play in that series, said he was outstanding, and he's the guy. And I when we drafted him, I used terms of sort of those Brian Trotz, that hard skill, Bobby Clark, that leader that can bring some physicality and has that sneaky skill. That is Brady Martin to me, and I hope I'm depicting him correctly for not only for our organization but for our fans. But in the early views of him at junior, at the elite level, at the U18s, at the World Juniors, and now in the OHL playoffs, all those things are starting to, I'll say, get clarified a little bit of some of the things that we felt about him.
Barry Trotz is with us. Barry, Zachary Leroux has had an opportunity to play on a line with Steven Stamkos and Ryan O'Reilly in recent games. How have you liked that fit? And do you see Leroux as someone who can complement your top skill players in the long term?
I think he will. I think he's still learning that game. I think Zach has a unique ability. He's mature in so many areas, especially his board play, his stick and penalty killing, I'll just say his awareness in terms of, especially when you're killing penalties, you have to have a feel of where the other players are, and you're trying to manipulate things with your stick. And angles, and he has a really good sense there. So there's a lot of maturity to his game in those areas. I would think on the offensive side, that will start to come a little bit more as he, I'll say, hopefully transitions maybe from when he comes up a lot of times, he's transitioned into that fourth line role. I'm hoping, I've seen it in the past where a young player, and they're totally different. So I'm not calling him or comparing him to this player in terms of the way they play, is Tom Wilson. When I was in Washington, he was on the fourth line and playing a game of sort of dump and chase and bang and try to create some turnovers and be on the plus side, bring in some physicality. And then you get an opportunity to play with better players. You sort of grow your game a little bit, learn to be a little bit more patient, and work on your offensive game. And I think that'll come. I mean, Zach's a young player that hopefully that you get some more offense out of him. But I think it's great that the coaches have recognized that he can sort of complement some of those skill guys and spread the wealth out with other guys as well on other lines.
Before we let you go, Barry, 2 of the Predators' final 5 games are against the Anaheim Ducks, including tonight at the Honda Center. the Ducks have been undergoing a transition of their own in recent years. It seems to be bearing fruit now. Their top 3 scorers are 22 and younger. As you scout the Ducks, what stands out to you?
I think that is their high-end young players. I mean, Carlson and Cutter Gauthier and players like that high-end young talent. And they've been drafting very well, and they've been drafting those high picks for a few years now, and they're starting to really see the transformation of their own team, of their young guys taking the next step, and they're creating a new core, if you will, just as we hope to do. And they're an exciting young team. They're fast. They're supplemented with some really good veterans, the Kreiders and the Trubas and the Gudises of the world. Those are good pieces to surround your team. They've got some physicality and some size, and guys like Johnson and people like that. So they're a really good team. They're an up and coming team. They've got a lot of skill, a lot of speed. I know they've been going through a little bit of a downturn in terms of, I think they've lost 2 or 3 in a row here, and I know Joe Quenneville very well. They've had a few days off, so they'll be hungry. They'll be coming at us real hard. We had a real hard game last night, and then our guys will have to really dig in today against I think a very motivated and good team coached by a future Hall of Famer in Joel Quenneville.
How strange will it be for you to see John Carlson wearing an orange jersey?
It will be real strange. I always thought Carly was going to go. He was going to go the distance as a Washington Capital. It will seem really strange. I mean, I looked at I went down to see the coaches this morning before they had their meetings, and I saw his name up there, and I have to think twice that it was John. Because you're still thinking he's always a Washington Capital. So it seemed very strange that he will be wearing a Ducks uniform.
Predators.
And really, I was going to say, really, yes. People don't know John Carlson, really an underrated defenseman for a number of years. Never got the recognition he probably did, because he was a tremendous defenseman, yes, and still is.
Yes. Barry Trotz, Predators GM, has been our guest on D-Mace. Vin Gnadonic, he joins us every Tuesday during hockey season, and he is presented by Green Ventures Landscaping and Gary Force Acura. Barry, as always, we appreciate your time. Enjoy the game tonight. Good luck.
All right. I appreciate it. Keep up the good work, and I know you'll stay up late tonight watching the Preds. It should be a real good game.
Absolutely. Thank you, Barry. 615-737-1025. We'll take your reaction to what Barry Trotz had to say. But coming up next, Derek, I'm sorry, we're going to have to do this. We're going to have to talk about Michigan. I'm really sorry, Derek. Yeah, we have to. Seriously? I'm sorry. We're going to have to do it. Hey, your Big Ten. Dominance.
I'm not that guy. You
sent me the thing today that said the Big Ten won the men's title, the women's title, and the football championship.
They did. That's just for topics. So we could, but I'm not celebrating because Michigan won.
We're going to do it. 615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan. We are broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service.
Okay, everybody, let's get real about some of these interest rates that are out there. They are eating up your monthly budget. Some credit card interest rates could be now over 29%. Loan Pronto wants you to know that there are a lot of people that are just making the minimum payment, so you're just not getting anywhere, and they've got a better solution for you. It's the Loan Pronto. Use the equity in your home. That's the philosophy. The Rapid Equity Loan Program. You can pay off your credit cards with your existing HELOC, your car loans, or get money for that home improvement project. Because many homeowners don't realize you can use the equity in your home to access hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash, and you get on better financial footing this way. One client, for example, got $100,000 approved, saved over $1,500 a month, and with Loan Pronto, you can do it all from your phone. You got to love that. Rates are at near 3-year lows. So go to loanpronto.com, see how much money you can save and how much money you can get in about 60 seconds. Loan Pronto, 2,800 5-star Google reviews. 615-499-5780 or loanpronto.com. Equal housing lender, NMLS 1661781, and MLSconsumeraccess.org.
D-Mace, Vingen, and Donick, 102.5 The Game. What a great song. Remember when CBS randomly replaced the Luther Vandross version with like a Jennifer Hudson version? for a year, and people were so mad about it they went back to Luther Vandross?
Rightfully so. I mean, I like what you call it, but you got to go back to, you got to stick with the original.
Yes.
Come on now.
Absolutely.
It's fantastic. It's fantastic. You know who hates it? Robbie Stanley. Robbie
Does
Stanley.
he?
Yes. Sometimes Ian will bring in the Rob brand by playing One Shining Moment. Robbie, for some reason, just hates the song One Shining Moment. And I don't disagree with Robbie on a lot of things, but that is something I will disagree on with Robbie. It's a classic.
It is.
It's an absolute classic. Last night's game was not a classic. Michigan defeats UConn 69-63 in the men's national championship game. Michigan's first title in nearly 40 years, right?
Yeah.
1989, right?
1989 was their last championship, I think.
Last men's
men's
basketball championship, of course.
Yes,
They've
yes,
won
yes.
other
Ramil
championships.
Robinson.
Yes.
Glenn Rice.
Glenn Rice.
Yes. And
Terry Mills.
although the score was 6 points, it didn't really ever feel that way. Michigan seemed to always be in control of that game. As I said, it was an ugly shooting performance overall. But look, Michigan was the best team throughout the season. The best team won. And I was reading Rex Rhodes' column today on The Athletic. I need to pull it back up. Let me ask you this as I look it up, Willie and Derek. How would you rate this tournament overall?
Wow, man. I thought there was no story, I don't think. Because I thought last year there was this story sort of brewing last year. And you just didn't have that this year. Not that I believe anyway. I mean, we made a story locally with Vanderbilt. Yes, it's always going to be a story. But I'm not sure if it had that. Well, it didn't have the Cinderella. It didn't have that, which is really the story, or that one player. We didn't have that this year, at least not to my. At least I don't feel that way. Other people may feel that there was a story. There was that one guy that just sort of, became this bright light throughout the tournament. But I don't recall like there being this story that just kind of built up. We just didn't have that this year, I don't think.
Rex Rhodes' column, Willie, with the headline, Michigan's greatness can't save March Madness from something much less than that. Rex Rhodes writes, quote, this just wasn't a very good NCAA tournament. It floundered at the finish. It did not befit the season that led up to it, a season that delivered one of the best freshman classes of all time, new stars, new powerhouse teams, tremendous non-league matchups, prolific offenses, and high fan interest.
Yeah, I mean, I always enjoy the tournament. I know what the issues are right now. I did think that there was great drama. I mean, you think about the very first game, Kentucky-Santa Clara, that had a great ending. That was a great game. You had basically a half-court shot that preserved Kentucky's season. Vanderbilt had the same kind of over half-court shot that rimmed out. I mean, you had some drama. Needless to say, the Connecticut Duke game.
La 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 la.
Oh, but I mean,
la 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 la.
To me, that's what the tournament's about: is great moments, great finishes,
yes,
like that, right? Buzzer beaters and situations at the end of games, and it had its share of it. But I think the theme of the tournament for me is that it's growing in popularity. The need to have an older roster, an experienced roster, is the way to win. I mean, we're so far removed now from having a couple of solid upperclassmen and 3 amazing freshmen, things like that. It is much more about, do you have guys who have played 3-4 seasons of college basketball? Even if they're all coming together for the first time, that's how you win.
Michigan's average age was 22 years old. Now, and I'm not going to make a big deal Michigan won. But when you see stuff like that, it's almost like it was sort of like when UConn had its run, and you just knew that they were going to dominate everybody, no matter what you wish was going to happen or if you didn't like UConn, they were just that good. They were mowing down everybody. And I think in that championship game, they mowed down somebody. It just seemed like that way with Michigan. There was no, like, outside of Arizona, probably, I don't think realistically anybody thought there was somebody out there that could beat Michigan.
Willie, you sent us a post this morning from John Ziegler, who said, quote, Michigan just won a national championship in men's basketball with 0 starters who enrolled at Michigan as freshmen. They were all transfers. A starting lineup with an average age of 22. A starter who is 25 years old. Go Blue. Nice job, everyone.
I'm not sure. I'm trying to verify if all of that is correct. But whether it's I can't find the guy that's 25. There is one guy that I have verified is 24. Lindeborg is a great example, though, of the way it's going. He didn't start as the 5-star recruit that's been at the same school for 4 years or goes to a big-time school for 1 year and he's an obvious pro. Lindeborg is a little bit like the Dalton Connect, right? He is more of a late bloomer, and he was a guy that was just a force, right? He was the guy that tied everything together. And you put him on a team with other guys who have done it in different places, like Mara played at UCLA for a couple of years, comes over to Michigan. But if you have the right coach, the right resources, and a great eye for how the pieces fit, that's how you win. I think it's a much different formula than it used to be.
I'm a sucker for these sorts of things, and that's why websites publish these stories. The way too early top 25 rankings for 2026, 2027.
And how could you possibly do it the way the roster's turned over, right? This
you're right.
Is even more.
That is a caveat when publishing these stories. And Jeff Borzello, who wrote this story for ESPN, certainly mentions that. He has Michigan as number 1. Michigan could theoretically return most of the team that just won the national title. What I found to be interesting, Vanderbilt at number 24 on the way too early top 25. But as Borzello notes, 6 of the Commodores' top 7 scorers from this season are out of eligibility. But the one who could return is Tyler Tanner, who will enter next season as a preseason All-American and one of the premier guards in college basketball if he foregoes the NBA draft. And so much is going to change. The transfer portal, I believe, opened today, right? So a lot of players changing addresses. But and that will be fascinating to see. I mean, it's just like free agency now. Like when we came on the air that Monday during the legal tampering period in the NFL, free agency wasn't for 2 more days, but we all know that was free agency. And that's what today sort of feels like. I'm going to all of the transfer portal insider X accounts and looking at which players are going and which players are coming and all of that stuff. So it is hard to project which teams are going to be good next season, but it wouldn't surprise me in the least if Michigan is right back here again in 1 year's time.
I'm just trying to figure out, do we think this is a good thing? Do we think this is going to sustain itself now that this is becoming the new norm, right? A team built like Michigan is, I think, officially the new norm. It's not unusual at all to have 5 guys that didn't start their career on your team. It was a loaded team that, and by the way, Yaxel Lindeborg is 23. And so he was their best player, but they were so strong. Lindeborg, as I mentioned, in the semifinal against Arizona, another heavyweight, he twisted his ankle and he missed a lot of the game. He played 15 minutes. They still crushed Arizona. So that's how deep their roster was. And so it's the research to identify the players that fit, the resources to get those guys, right? Enough money to build a roster like that. And then I think like there's flexibility involved too, right? Being able to turn your roster over. Like it's nothing for Rick Barnes now to know he's got to bring in basically an entire new team. And I think Mark Byington, if you take a look, when he first got there, he doesn't know anything different. He had to build a brand new team when he got there. He only kept 3 guys from the first team to the second team. Now we're not even sure if he's going to have Tyler Tanner and or Chandler Bing, but ideally those are the 2 guys you bring back, and that's it, right? The rest of the team's going to change.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be big for them. Obviously, what Tyler decides to do as far as his eligibility going to the NBA or not. But then if he doesn't, can you keep him at Vanderbilt? But then also, like you said, Bing, he's another guy that I think needs to be, and I'm sure he is a priority for them to keep, because if those guys stay, they're going to draw more guys in with them. But I think this is the way. I would say, at least for now, things could change. It's not about the average age of your team. It's about the average age of your starting five. You can see it in college football. Why did Vanderbilt improve the last 2 years? Why? Because their offensive line. Because those guys had experience across the board over the last 2 years. And it made them a better team, a quarterback that had experience. And I'm not just talking about the age. Age is a part of it. But if you look at Michigan starting five, the average age was 22 years old. So I'm not saying that, it's going to ultimately, this is the way it's going to be from here on out. But I'm saying, in the time being, what the state we're in now, I think that's the way they're going to go. Let me get my starting five, a veteran starting five, and then those guys behind them, they can we have room for them to develop while we're still winning.
Let's quickly go to Bear.
Is this a good thing?
Let's go to Bear on our phone line, driven by Wilson County, Hyundai.com. Thank you for calling, Bear. Go ahead.
All right, fellas. I just wanted, people always comment NIL, and I really have actually no problem with it, like really at all, because we live in a free market society. If they don't want to pay the guy, they ain't got to pay him. You know what I'm saying? The boosters ain't got to pony up the money. I mean, just like when Nico wanted more money to Tennessee, sorry, bro, can't do it. So he was out. I mean, it's just that simple. You can either pay it or not. The boosters come with the money or not. And as far as like the age, as long as they have the actual eligibility, I don't really see that as an issue. If you say you didn't go to college till you were 22, then you can play till you 28. However, I mean, it's just, people making billions of dollars off of their hard work. They should be compensated, and whoever want to pay them, whatever they want to pay them, let them pay them. That's all I got, guys.
Thanks, Bear.
He's right. I mean, and they've taken full advantage of it. And I don't think that's going to continue to happen. It's going to be that way. Here are the ages of both UConn and Michigan. They're starting five. Caravan, 23 years old. Reed, 22. They got freshman Mullen, 19. DeMurray Jr., 21. Ball, 22. That's UConn. Michigan. Lindenberg, 23. Johnson, 20. Morris, 20. Elliott is 21. And Burnett is 24. What they're telling you is that you need to have at least two older guys on your roster if you want to go far. And when I mean older guys, I'm talking about guys that can play. Because, I mean, if you look at other teams, they got a lot of talent. You look at Arkansas, they had a lot of talent, but they didn't have any veteran guys on that team. So I think you're going to start seeing more of this, having at least one or two 22, 23-year-olds amongst, some freshmen and some juniors.
615-737-1025. We'll take your thoughts on Michigan's national championship, which made Derek just throw up in his mouth a little bit. But,
Give me the chills, man. Ugh.
I know. But you know what? Michigan State has the opportunity to do it next year. There's always next year.
But that's a great example, because Tom Izzo has done it with his own guys, right? He clearly prefers the way he's always done it. Take those mostly homegrown, right? Most of the players he gets are from Michigan, I would say. He's had so many over the years, but he doesn't go out and turn his roster over every year. They're one of the few that has kind of stayed true to the old formula. I do wonder if he adapts at all and takes a run at a couple more transfers or things like that, or does he keep doing it the way that's worked for him?
615-737-1025. We'll wrap up the show. Coming up next, Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025 The Game. There's your super freak, Willie Donick. There it is.
Sometimes you gotta wait for it, you know? You can't.
Good things come to those who wait.
Exactly.
Haven't you heard that before? But there's your super freak, the theme of the show.
You need super freaks on
I
a
like
team.
that.
Preds need super freaks. Titans need super freaks. And of course, we on DVD are all three of us are super freaks.
Absolutely.
David is definitely a super freak.
I don't like where this
we
conversation is going.
We have at least three.
I don't like where this conversation is going.
Hey, Willie, I know what you mean.
I appreciate that way, but let's calm down.
Hey, we're unique, man. We're not
a term
like
of
everybody
endearment.
else. Exactly.
I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Well, I mean, earlier today, before we came on the air, during the What Day Is It in Celebrity Birthday segment on Jason Big Show, Nick Frazier said it was International Beaver Day.
Oh, my
then
goodness.
said, quote unquote, shout out to the Beavers.
Had to explain to him what a beaver is.
We had to explain the euphemism
yes.
to young Nick Frazier, who was just so innocent.
Yeah.
Just so innocent. So let's keep our super freakiness to ourselves. How about that?
Okay. Hey, yeah.
Hey, if people have seen the movie The Naked Gun, then you know what comes to mind when they start talking about beavers.
Oh, boy. All right. This is a family show, need I remind you?
Right.
Oh, man. It's not 6 o'clock yet, Willie.
Yes.
Oh, man.
The parents are still watching.
Oh, my goodness.
Yes.
Oh, well.
The Predators are back in action tonight. Willie Donick is in SoCal. He's still there. He will leave after tonight. The Predators take on the Ducks. Puck drop at 9, pregame at 8, right here on 102.5 The Game. Yet another big game for the Predators, who are 1 point behind the LA Kings for the final wild card spot in the Western Conference. 5 games to go, 2 against Anaheim tonight, and I believe to wrap up the season at Bridgestone Arena. So the Predators and Ducks will be reacquainted in just a couple of weeks. The big news today from the Nashville Predators, we talked to Sean Henry at the beginning of the show, as well as Brian Lawler, the president of Script Sports. The Predators announced today that starting next season, all Predators games will be available free and over the air on the new channel dubbed The Spot, Nashville 28. Scripps owns News Channel 5, so there will be some games on News Channel 5 as well. There will be a direct-to-consumer streaming app as well. Details will be unveiled soon. But big news, because if there's one thing that irks Willie Donick, it's being asked when the game is on and how you get it. Now you don't have to worry about that anymore, because the games, as long as you have an antenna, you will be able to get the Predators games next season. The Predators are the 5th team to join up with Scripps. Vegas, Florida, Tampa Bay, and Utah are the others. And as you heard, if you missed it, from Brian Lawler, president of Scripps, earlier in the show, those teams have seen massive boosts in ratings by being over the air. So to me, Willie Donick, it's a win-win-win for the Nashville Predators.
It is exciting. And I'm sure a lot of people are out there going, what's an antenna? How do we antenna? What do you mean? It is a very simple thing to get. It's a one-time. You just have to get it. I believe that they make TVs. Maybe I'm not cutting edge when it comes to the latest TVs, but I'm hearing that some of the later models actually have the antenna built in. So you just need to put that setting on, and you'll have the over-the-air channels. But I'm told it's an easy thing to go purchase at an electronics store or something like that, $20-$30 or something like that, and then you'll have access to all the games. There will be a streaming device, and they are still looking for partnerships. And Derek, you asked this question. I knew it was going to be asked by somebody. The YouTube TV.
Yes.
You don't necessarily have to have. You don't. Even if they don't have a partnership with YouTube TV, by the time the season starts next year, you can still get it with the antenna.
Oh, okay.
But they're hoping to build partnerships with things like YouTube TV and other settings so that you just will have the channel, and it makes it that much easier.
So that starts next season. Of course, you can watch the game tonight with Willie Donick and the crew on FanDuel Sports Network, and you can hear it with Max Hers and Hal Gill right here on 102.5 The Game. Chase McCabe will have pregame coverage for you beginning at 8 o'clock. Derek?
Yes.
Yesterday, you were quite pissed at Gina Auriemma.
Yes.
And today, Dawn Staley said in a statement that she has spoken to Gina Auriemma. She wrote, quote, or someone wrote for her, quote, I spoke with Gino and I want to be clear. I have a great deal of respect for him and what he's meant to this game. One moment doesn't define a career, and it doesn't change the impact he's had on growing women's basketball. The standard at UConn is what it is because of him, and that's something this game has benefited from. So I'm asking everyone to turn the page. Let's refocus on what matters most, continuing to elevate our game, creating opportunities, and pushing it forward. That's always been my mission, and it's not changing, end quote.
I've always said you cannot be more offended than the person that was actually offended. So if Dawn Staley says she's moved past it, I am going to move past it, but it doesn't. She's right when she said one moment shouldn't, and it shouldn't. But he has had a history of sort of, doing this. He's a great coach, but I'm just saying in that arena, he's had his moments. I'm not saying what type of person he is outside of the arena. I'm just talking about when they are on that hardwood, what he has shown several times that he's not a gracious loser. He doesn't know. And I get it in a sense, but don't be a bad loser. That's what we teach our kids. Don't be a bad loser. And I'm sure he has said that multiple times to his players. But then you've went out there on several occasions and displayed something other than that. Does it take away who you are as a coach as far as your standing in that sport? No. You're great. Everybody thinks you're great. But even though you're great doesn't mean I still can't call you to the carpet on what you did. Not just once. You've done it before. So she's right. It's not gonna, the big scheme of things, they're going to talk more about what he did for women's sports, women's basketball, than sort of the things he did that more than ruffled feathers with other coaches. So if Dawn's moving on, everybody else should move on too. But don't forget what he did.
It won't be forgotten.
If you would like to have a good laugh, find the whoever put this together. I saw it on social media, but there was a camera that followed the whole exchange, and then there were lip readers anytime they could see the people moving. The exchange is awesome. They have everything that Dawn Staley said. Like when she turns her own people and says, I will beat his whatever. It was just awesome how they did that.
That right there, that's from your pit. When somebody says that,
yeah, right.
When somebody says that, it's from their gut. Like, I will beat yo. Yeah, they mean exactly what they say in that minute.
That's how Philly was coming out.
Exactly. It came from her gut. Like, Gino don't want to mess with that. He don't want no smoke.
And she was trying to tell him. She's like, don't do this here.
Exactly.
Do not do this right here.
she said it 3 times, like, I will. Yeah. She was upset. She was hot.
I believe she could have done it too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
She for sure would.
That'll do it for us today. Wonderful show. Thank you for your participation. As always, we will be back tomorrow at 3 o'clock. Reminder, Predators versus Ducks. Yet another big game as the Predators try to clinch a playoff spot down the stretch. Puck drop at 9. Pregame at 8 right here on 102.5 The Game. Have a wonderful rest of your day. We will talk to you tomorrow at 3 o'clock.
Be loved. Love on your people. Have a safe, blessed, and wonderful day. I love you. The teams love you. You hear this music, don't you forget about us, because we will not forget about you. See you tomorrow at 3 p.m. on 102.5 The Game. Peace.